The main difference between a rural settlement and an urban settlement is this. With rural settlements, the economic activity is centered on agriculture, especially agricultural procurement, getting something off of the land. With urban settlements, as we've now seen, the economic activity is centered on manufacturing, trade, and services. There are two types of rural settlements and then two subtypes of rural settlements. There is the clustered rural settlement and the dispersed rural settlement. How about if we begin with the clustered rural settlement? With clustered rural settlements, what happens is this. The buildings are located close to each other, and the fields or the farmland spreads out away from the settlement. It's common throughout the world, but not so much in the western half of the United States and Canada. There are two types of clustered rural settlements. So these are the two subtypes. The first is called the circular rural settlement. Sounds like what it is, which is this. This is centered on a village or a town with the fields spreading outwards like spokes on a wheel away from the village. In many cases, these evolved over time as defensive settlements, and they may have evolved around a central plaza or a central square. Oftentimes, there was a religious structure, which may still very well be there on that central plaza or square. And of course, in that central square, this is where the markets are going to occur, including the fresh produce from the agricultural land that's around. Again, the von Thunen model, once again, has applicability. It doesn't go away, especially if you look at the left-hand side where you have the circles going around the city. If you had a circular city or village or town, then you're going to have the farmland that's going to be around it, at least on a rural landscape. And remember, that's what von Thunen was looking at anyway. So if here we have a village, these lines are delineating the fields. And you can see the fields are kind of like spokes going outwards away from the city. And those are all going to be agricultural fields that then bring food into the city and then maybe sell it as well. This is a circular, clustered rural settlement. This is in Romania. You can see the way it looks exactly the way I've described it. This is Volterra, Italy. A lot of times in places where there are hills, like in Italy, it's a hilly country. And so you have these hill towns where the town sits up on the top, which is perfect for defensive measures. And in addition to that, all the fields then would be down below and you could bring the food into the city. On the right-hand side is India. You can see, once again, clustered rural settlement, fields outwards away from it. And then the bottom left-hand side, Europe once again. There are also what are known as linear rural settlements. So this is the second subtype of a clustered rural settlement. With a linear rural settlement, these are found along a form of transportation. That could be a road, a river, a railroad, whatever it may be. And then the fields extend outwards in narrow strips away from that line of transportation and the houses that are clustered along the line of transportation. So the town stretches along the transportation line, whatever form it may take. And then the fields stretch outward from the houses along the transportation line. This is really famous in Quebec, in Canada. And the system is known as the French long lot system. What happens is the fields stretch outwards away from the town that's along the form of transportation. And as the owner of the field dies, the land is then passed on to his descendants or her descendants. And then the fields are then split up so they become smaller and smaller and smaller. So you get these very long, thin fields. One time when I was in Quebec, I remember looking at this and seeing fields literally that were like maybe 5 yards, 8 yards wide, and then stretched out a quarter of a mile. It was really remarkable. Again, von Thunen. If we look at the right-hand side, we have a river. The town stretches along the river. And the same thing's going to happen. It's just that the fields are going to stretch outwards away from the town rather than kind of in parallel strips. So let's say this is the form of transportation. The red represents the town, the village that's stretching out along the form of transportation. And now you can see all of the fields, all linear fields stretching out away from the town. That is common of a linear clustered rural settlement. And if you look here, we can see linear clustered rural settlement. Indeed, you can see right along the transportation route, and you can see the fields stretching out in long linear strips away from the town. Same thing here. This is actually in Quebec, and you can see the St. Lawrence River and a road running along the St. Lawrence River. So here's the St. Lawrence River right here. And then you can see that road running along it. Then you can see the fields all stretching out away from the form of transportation. Same thing here. You can see linear clustered rural settlements and the fields stretching out away from them in kind of these long, thin lots. With dispersed rural settlements, what we have is isolated farm buildings surrounded by fields. So those isolated buildings surrounded by fields means that you don't have immediate neighbors. This is common in the United States and Canada, especially the western part of both of these countries. Remember, there were large tracts of land that were handed out to people after, of course, the indigenous people were moved out. We're not going to forget that part. And the public land survey system set up large lots of land for each farmer to farm on. This is easiest done in developed countries, in rich countries, because of the transportation networks. Usually in rich countries, what ends up happening is you have excellent transportation, and that allows for people to be spread out at greater distances. You can see right here, dispersed rural settlements, classic of the American landscape. Same thing here. Isolated farm buildings, fields all around them, neighbors not close by. That is a dispersed rural settlement.